This is my take on a simple Durban style prawns chutney. If you love prawns, this is such a great dish to prepare. It's really quick to make and an excellent dish to experiment with, especially if you've never cooked prawns before. All of the ingredients and quantities can be found on inspiredbypriestfood.com, but I will list all of the ingredients and quantities in the description box below. You'll start off by marinating the prawns with some lemon juice, turmeric, and Kashmiri masala, ensuring all the prawns are coated with the spices, so make sure that you get in there. Ideally, it would be great to marinate these prawns, cover the bowl with some cling wrap, and pop it into the fridge until the next day or until you're ready to cook. However, if you are in a rush and you are cooking this prawns curry and you need to start cooking immediately, then by all means, you can go ahead after marinating the prawns. To fry the prawns, I'm going to fry the prawns in some butter. So you can add some butter to a heated pan and allow the butter to melt. The thing about prawns is that it cooks really quickly. So we just want to give it a quick fry on both sides. Once the butter is melted, you can then proceed to add in some crushed garlic just to flavor the butter and the prawns. Mix the garlic into the butter, and once you hear a little bit of sizzling, you can then go in with your prawns. So if you've never made prawns before, this is a very quick process. You're basically just going to add in the prawns for a couple minutes on each side, and it all depends on the size of prawns that you're working with. Once the prawns start to curl, you can then turn it over. We're basically just wanting to cook these prawns till they're half cooked, and once they're half cooked, we're then going to remove it from the pot. You'll notice that the color starts to change slightly as it starts to curl, and that's a great cue for you to start turning over the prawns. When you turn them over, you're just going to leave them in the butter for about 30 to 45 seconds. It doesn't really matter if it's not fully cooked. It will cook in the chutney itself. So once you've given it a turn and it has about 30 seconds to cook, you can then go ahead and start removing the prawns. One thing that I love about making seafood is that seafood generally has the most amazing flavors. So in the same pot, all you're going to do is add in any oil of your choice. I prefer to use olive oil. You can use vegetable oil. And you're simply just going to add in a little bit of oil just so that you can cook off your onions, curry leaves, and green chilies. And you're going to cook this until the onions are nice and translucent and your kitchen starts to smell absolutely amazing with the fragrance that comes and gets released from the curry leaves. Once the onions become translucent, you can then add in a heaped teaspoon of crushed garlic. Make sure that it's mixed in. I like to do this at this particular point so that the garlic doesn't really burn and it's still able to release its flavor whilst it's cooking. And then you can go in with your ground spices, which is going to be your turmeric, your Kashmiri masala. It's just 2 spices. You're going to mix it into the oil, and it's really important that you mix and you nurture at this step because this is where the spices releases its flavors, and it's really important to cook out the spices, otherwise you'll end up with a very raw chutney with uncooked spices. After a couple minutes, you can then proceed to add in some grated tomatoes. I prefer to grate the tomatoes. I feel like they cook a lot faster and the texture of the chutney is a lot better. That's just my preference. You can obviously whiz it up or you can dice it. Mix it in with the spices and onions mixture. And you want to allow this to braise for a couple minutes before seasoning with some sugar. Once everything's well combined, you can then season with some salt and with some sugar. The reason why you add sugar into a chutney is to cut out the acidity, and sometimes some tomatoes can be a little bit on the tangier side, so it really does give the tomatoes in general a nice sweetness. And then you're going to pop on the lid and allow this to simmer on low to medium heat until it's cooked. It's really important when making any base of any curry or chutney that you keep checking on it, because a lot of moisture releases, and sometimes if you leave the chutney for way too long, it can dry up. So you want to make sure that the consistency is right. Pop on the lid after giving it a quick stir, and then after a couple minutes you can then check up on it. If you find that it is drying out, what you can do is just add a little dash of water. The most important thing is that the chutney cooks out. So you want to be able to have a lovely prawns chutney, and you don't want it to be bitter or tangy or overly sweet. So you just want to make sure that the chutney is at a right consistency and it is seasoned perfectly. After about 10 to 15 minutes of cooking the chutney on low to medium heat, what you want to do is just give it a final mix, and you should notice that the chutney is a lot thicker. So what I like to do is just use the back of the spoon and just press in the tomatoes and onions so that the chutney is really smooth. Make sure that you give it a quick taste test and make sure that the seasonings are all balanced out, the sweetness is perfect, there's enough salt, and then you can go in with the prawns. Now once again, I did mention prawns cook really quickly, and we're working with prawns that are already half cooked. So most importantly here, all we want to do is to just coat the prawns with the cooked chutney and allow it to cook for about 5 to 7 minutes on very low heat, because the last thing you want is this beautiful chutney which you've put so much of work into to be amazing, but the prawns are going to be rubbery. So pop on the lid and just have patience for about 5 minutes. Make sure that your pot is on low to medium heat, and after that all you simply have to do is just give it one final stir, and there you have it. That's it. It's so simple to make a prawns chutney. You can also do this with fried fish as well. It really works well. All that's left to do now is to just garnish this with some fresh coriander, and even fresh curry leaves works really magically with this. But if you do have some fresh coriander, certainly add it in. It's just going to seal these wonderful flavors and add a lovely depth of extended flavor to your prawns chutney. And there you have it, my simple take on a Durban style prawns chutney. I hope you guys enjoy this recipe. You can find the full recipe in the description box below.